Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from Software Architecture in London. I'm here with Michael Hausenblas. Michael, how you doing?
Thank you, very good. It's a great conference here. I'm really happy to be here, and a lot of interesting discussions, and yeah.
So quite a few things have changed with you since the last time we spoke. Yeah. You're with Red Hat now.
Yeah, that's right.
And you guys have from the metal all the way through the cloud. Can you explain a little bit about what Red Hat offers?
There are many things that are available from virtualization layers such as OpenStack over OpenShift. That's the platform I'm working on. That's based on Kubernetes. You have Ansible to provision stuff. There are serverless or function as a service offerings around that. Even mobile solutions. I think the main part is that we work with open source and in open source, so contributing to open source and taking open source, making it enterprise grade, and providing that to our customers.
So function as a service,
yeah.
And you like that term because there really is hardware somewhere. It's not this, there's no server. It's just, it's a little different.
So I regret a little bit that I wrote an O'Reilly book on serverless ops, so I should have really called it function as a service ops. But back then it was a little bit more catchy, I guess. And the main point there really is, on the one hand, obviously the huge benefits to really be very agile, being able to deploy that. And we had some very interesting discussions yesterday as well. I gave a talk here at Software Architecture, people asking, when is the right time and for what should we deploy function as a service. And the thing there is, there are all these implications that, for example, you don't have ops folks provisioning something. There is no server or something for the developer, which means also that at the end of the day, the developer is the one who is operating that function. So, kind of like developers on call or developers on pager, and that has certain implications also on the organizational aspects, and that's a quite interesting thing.
So, but even cloud infrastructures,
right.
There's hardware somewhere, right? So there is a box or some piece of hardware somewhere.
Right.
And we're kind of maybe missing that. So talk to me a little bit about the DevOps role in today's world, because I think, DevOps was a huge promise 6-7 years ago, and still is.
Right.
But and I think a lot of large enterprises think that if they move to DevOps, they're going to become agile.
Right.
Is that true?
So I strongly believe in the basic idea of DevOps, which means essentially developers and operation folks have a mutual understanding and respect for the work that they're doing. What I'm slightly concerned is that people trying to sell DevOps as something that you can buy in a box or whatever. That's not it. It's like DevOps to me is kind of like the religion, and then there are people that actually have roles. I'd prefer to call them AppOps, a term that Brian Nils from formerly DigitalOcean.
What was
AppOps, so application ops. So the person who is actually responsible and function as a service takes that to the extreme where you really have developers or need developers on pagers. So to me, this mutual respect and being aware of what the other side does is fundamental. But I fear that a lot of the uptake, if the organizations are not ready to really tear down these walls between operations and development, will not be that successful. So that's my main worry that we're thinking.
Is Agile always associated with DevOps? Because I do hear from some large enterprises that they want to become a more Agile organization.
Right.
Therefore, we want to adopt DevOps.
Right.
Are they synonymous?
So not necessarily to me. I can perfectly imagine having a more separated, people looking after an environment like Kubernetes, OpenShift or whatever, and people writing the applications and deploying that on top. And you can be very agile with that setup. It's really depending on the unit of deployment. For example, take a VM versus a container versus a function in a function as a service setup. The responsibilities, who is taking care of operating them, who is actually fixing a bug or whatever, depending on that unit of deployment, shift to the one side or to the other. And that's, to me, it's more like, for what use case am I using what tool? And then you will have this split between operations and development. Agility is all about, in my understanding, being able to ship the features that the business needs faster. And now we have a kind of tool set of things at our disposal that we can use, and we can kind of like choose the agility that we want depending on the use case, and I think that's a great thing, but organizations still need to learn a lot.
So shipping features and also maybe scaling, like if it's Christmas time or
Right.
holiday time
Right.
and people need to scale quickly.
Right.
So are we getting to a point where a DevOps person can push a button and scale? I mean, is it that easy yet?
So this is funny that you say a DevOps person, because this is exactly the thing that I'm against. There is no, like, DevOps is really this kind of thing that I believe that makes us
a religious
work together,
person.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have certain roles. You have developers. You have AppOps or whatever you want to call them, and many environments, for example, Kubernetes with the horizontal pod autoscaler, for example, provide that auto-scalability both on the application level and on the infrastructure level. You can say add new nodes if I need new or more capacity, or functions as services is a prime example for that. You don't need to worry at all. It automatically scales there, which is great for stateless stuff. For stateful stuff, we are still early days, so automatically scaling, and data has gravity, right? So it's not. I had a lot of discussions the past day where people ask, like, should we start on premises and then move to the cloud or directly in the cloud? And the main thing there to me is always think about where your data lives. If your data lives on premises currently, well, you can burst out to the cloud for stateless stuff, but how quickly can you get a couple of terabytes or petabytes or whatever into the cloud or back if you need to? So that is, to me, the main decision factor to decide.
Are we at all nearing a point in time where we almost have too much history with us? I mean, are we ever going to say we need to deep archive a bunch of history because the legacy that we bring with us may not be all that useful?
Right.
Is there a point where infrastructure grows so much and the data that we can produce because of it and the people that consume it?
Right.
Are we nearing that?
I strongly believe that legacy, what typical people call legacy, is actually the thing that makes you money, right? That's the thing that you actually care about. All the new things that promise you, be more agile, whatever, that's great, and we should adopt them, but also make sure that we have the success around that. So just purely adopting everything that comes out because it's trendy or whatever is probably not the best way to success. And yeah, we do have more options, but I also think that having more options is a great thing, because you can now you don't have just that one option, a VM or whatever. You have, for this workload, the best way might actually be functions as a service. For this workload or this use case, a container-based system might be the best. So I like this approach of really seeing that as a toolbox where you have to be aware of all these things in your toolbox and then picking the right tool for the right job.
And so Red Hat, you guys offer that sort of like your choice opportunity. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
And do you look at organizations to figure out what fits them best, or do they have to figure out what fits them best, or?
It is one of the parts, so I'm not in sales or whatever, but it's one of the parts that especially my colleagues in solution architects do, sitting together with the customer and looking through the options that are there, what makes most sense. And at the end of the day, companies prefer having one source, having essentially, rather than having 2 or 4 different systems that they then need to integrate, having everything from one platform or whatever you want to call that. And if that platform is rich enough, and for example in Kubernetes land, that is now getting more and more traction around the service catalog, where you then can integrate with things like, I don't know, from AWS S3 or whatever, so that you can bring things that the platform itself not natively offers into the platform through that integration. So we see that there's demand for that, and that is certainly something that will land very soon.
So Michael, if you and I sit down 12 months from now in London and have this conversation next year, what's going to change in the market in general? And what would you like to see change for Red Hat as well?
Right. So one trend that I think is going to continue, and pretty much today with the announcement came out that Docker also supports Kubernetes, is that Kubernetes is more or less the de facto standard for container orchestration. So no matter if you have it on top or below or whatever, that is kind of like in the same way that Linux is more or less the de facto standard in that, being an operating system for a single machine. Kubernetes increasingly will be the standard for how you actually manage a couple of machines on the application level. Other things that I expect would be everything around serverless or function as a service, so that matures and more people jump on that train. And I also expect much more, like, again, it's early days nowadays, but much more in this edge computing, so you have much more IoT devices, whatever, that take certain workloads off directly at the edge, and you see that already going mainstream nowadays, and in 12 months I'm pretty sure we would be more or less there.
And then what do you see differently for Red Hat in 12 months from now?
I'm very positive that we will continue to grow and hopefully make our customers successful, and the rest is up for grabs.
Excellent, Michael. We look forward to that
Thank
conversation.
you very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.